Hey, everybody.
Welcome to Trust Relations, the podcast.
I'm here with April, the founder of Trust Relations and the doyen of all things public relations.
And of course, we're joined by the wonderful Hamish, our marketing lead and expert in the space, who I like to call my marketing other half.
We're tackling some of the biggest topics in news and integrated marketing and learning from the mistakes that make headlines or sink brands.
So join us as we have a chat about what works, what doesn't, and what we have to say about all of it. Hamish is doing the Hamish dance.
Yeah, sorry, please go.
Amazing. How was your week? How are you doing?
Woo, it's all right. Okay. It's been busy. Is it Thursday, Friday? I don't know. I've lost track. It's been a long week already. A good week.
That's good. I hear you on not knowing what day it was. I almost said in a response to somebody today, have a great weekend, like it's Friday. And then I had to delete it. I was like, it's not even, I could get by with that on Thursday, but not on Wednesday.
You know what you need to do? Then you follow it up with next email. I realize that you don't think it's a weekend, but I think you work so hard. You deserve a long weekend. Have fun.
So smooth.
Yeah, that's how you can. That's the only way to handle those things graciously. Own it. If you don't own it, what are you doing?
That's a good point. So Hamish, as part of Trust Relations, the podcast, we're doing communications buzzwords of the day. Each week, our producer is going to share a secret buzzword for Hamish and I to use during the episode. The rules are simple. And yes, we're keeping score. And I am probably going to lose. So we both have to find a way to work in the word of the day, whatever we're given by the producer. And then it's up to our co-host to spot when we use it. And also make sure that we expand our vocabulary so we don't lean in to too much corporate speak online and
We
take
should
it
take
offline.
this offline. And yes, the score keeping is going to be kept by our producer so that at the end of the season, we can tally it up and see who's won. This will be fun. I'm looking forward to this.
Hi, everyone. This is your show producer, Veronica, dialing in with today's communications buzzwords. April's word for today is obdurate. And for Hamish, the word is skookum. Happy listening.
So Hamish, what is in the news that has caught your eye?
You know what? I think I'm going to go to a local piece. There's a 10-year-old girl who purportedly owns 2 companies, and the article says could retire by the age of 15. Sorry, I should read the headline. A 10-year-old girl already owns 2 companies and could retire at 15 as a multi-millionaire.
So wait, why did you say purportedly? And is that your word of the day?
That's not my word of the day, no. But I'm just going to keep throwing things in just to keep you on your toes. Why do I say purportedly? Well, I think any girl who's the face of a company at 10 years old is not necessarily the owner. If I put my cynical hat on just a little bit, not too tightly, it's not hard to be cynical because this girl, Pixie Curtis, her mum is a very well-known Australian PR guru, been fantastic. She's done very well. She owns Sweaty Betty. Her name's Roxy Jasenko. But she's known to court the limelight and isn't shy and has done some fantastic things for her clients. So I think turning her daughter into a client and backing her with some solid products is genius in many ways. But whether or not the headline is accurate is a different matter. I think, and that's where she's letting her PR chops shine.
Right. So it's more like the daughter is sort of a stunt or a
puppet.
A puppet. I was going to say a mascot. I don't know. Yeah. So and the stage mom is actually running the show.
Yeah, look, I think that's a nice way to put it. And I don't want to take anything away from Pixie. She might be a very enterprising, charming, gregarious girl.
She probably is if her mom is that way, right? I mean, it's the apples don't fall far from the tree, but I can't imagine she actually built a multi-million-dollar company by herself with no help.
No, and look, even the headline, the subhead, Pixie Curtis may become the youngest person in the world to retire. Well, I mean, is she going to retire at 15? Is that the age that you decide to retire so you can set a world record? Or do you just keep going because you got passion? Just It's clickbait. What's a term that you would use if you're not clicking on it because it's it's a headline unto itself in a press piece? It's bait. It's just bait.
It's just
It's bait.
no click about it.
Yeah, that's right.
Straight bait.
It's dangling it in front of us. I mean, look, as I said, kudos. You know, the report says she made $140,000 in her first month. She's doing well, but she's backed by a solid team. So I just think it's a little misleading. But is it good marketing? I think so. Clearly.
Yes. In full disclosure, we have a client that has a son who started his own pet sub brand underneath Alpha Paw called Victor's Doggy Cookies. And we started pitching Victor as like, you know, we wanted to give him a fancy executive title and make it also, I think in this case, he did the bulk of the work for Victor's Doggy Cookies, but we did a similar thing where it was like, yeah, I think the story here is Victor. I think the little boy owning his own doggy biscuit company, which he was enterprising. Like it started out, actually, it was a cute story. It started out as him wanting to provide for the local animal shelters because he had a big heart for animals and wanted to play a part in that. And so he then started making cookies that he took to school to give to the shelter. And then he found a dog cookie recipe and his dad helped him acquire it. And then they sort of turned it into this thing. But it really did start as him from his own beautiful heart deciding, I'm going to go to school and bring cookies and sell them to take the money to the shelter. Right. So
that's nice.
Very, very sweet. Yeah. So, I mean, whether or not there was something like that with this girl, it's hard to know. Maybe it was just, hey,
look,
sweetie.
I didn't research it. So maybe, let's benefit of the doubt. Yes, she's very enterprising.
Anyway, it's very, very, very smart PR play.
Look, it's great PR play. It's clever marketing. And look, they've done well. Whether or not she'll retire, I don't think so. But unless she comes up, maybe she's a brand innovator. If that's the case, I will eat my words.
I want to see that.
No.
I mean, I always find it interesting when people want to retire early. I don't have that temperament at all. I feel like you don't either.
No, not at all.
I cannot even
bored.
imagine.
Well, for me, that's the way to be. And it keeps you young. It keeps you engaged. It's interesting. You're learning. That's what if I'm not busy, I'm bored. And at 15, what are you going to do? Retire and finish your schooling? That seems like an anticlimax.
I don't know. I'm way too ambitious for that. You know,
maybe there's an angle we're missing here. Maybe her parents set her up so that she could retire at 15 and they can kick her out by 16 and not have to fund her lifestyle.
Spoken like a true dad.
There could be something in this. Okay.
Oh, God.
I'll figure out, Pixie. Have a great life. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Oh, so funny. All right.
What about you? What's caught your eye this week?
I was very intrigued by this couple who was stuck in a traffic jam on I-95. And they were stuck there for hours and hours and hours along with everyone else. And they had this idea. There was a bread truck in front of them. Yeah. And they had this idea, let's call the parent company of the bread truck to see if we can get bread from that truck because we're starving. So they called, and the bread truck called the driver and gave him permission to give everyone that was stuck on the highway for, I think they were stuck there for 24 hours or something insane.
Wow.
And he stopped and, opened the back of the truck and gave bread to everyone.
Oh, that's amazing.
Sorry,
I'm gluten intolerant. I'm a celiac. You got anything else?
I actually am gluten intolerant.
No, really? So you would starve. That's a really nice story.
Isn't that sweet? I love it. And so then it became this like TikTok wonder, and that everybody that got bread was posting and the truck driver was posting. And it was a very cute thing where, a genuine opportunity for PR and social buzz arose for this company. And they, did the right thing. And it was a smaller company too. It wasn't like Wonder Bread or some big brand that you've heard of. I like when social media actually leads to a real story and not when people use social media to create a story. And this felt like, this is an organic arrival at a story instead of, I remember seeing something not long ago where it was like they, videotaped the babysitter on TikTok and she was singing The Little Mermaid and they caught her and she didn't know it. And then it became this news story. It was like, okay, there's no way they caught the babysitter on video. First of all, why is the mom home if the babysitter's there? Second of all, why is the babysitter singing a cappella with like an instrumental version of the Disney song in the back? I was like, I am not buying it. This is crap. But it made headlines. I was like, no,
Really?
no, like that can't be in the news. Put that away.
No, so I agree with you. The more organic, the more natural it is. They're the things that people resonate with. They're like, oh, what a cool moment. And it reminds me of that Ocean Spray guy. Can I call him Ocean Spray guy? A year or so ago,
Absolutely.
probably longer, where he was skating down the street, just knocked off work on a Friday afternoon. He's just skating down the street, sunset in the background, and he's just singing. What was he singing? Was he singing Fleetwood Mac?
Ocean Spray skateboard song. Dreams. Yes. I think I know it from the lyrics though, but let me confirm it's the right one.
Sorry, I won't sing. I don't want to deafen you.
Were you just singing Dreams?
No, I was just humming it badly.
Is it the one that goes, now here you go again, you lost your feeling, or whatever? I can't remember the lyrics.
Yeah, but what I loved about the Ocean Spray guy, skating down, some road. It's not that picturesque, but he's just at ease. He's probably knocked off work on a Friday. He's just skating down. He's got a bottle of Ocean Spray cranberry in his hand. Not a care in the world. And he's singing along to something that we can't hear, which turns out to be later Fleetwood Mac's Dreams. And he's just in his own moment. He's probably, his name's Dogface. He's probably just posted it to his 15 followers and it's gone from there. I mean,
amazing.
More than that, but I loved it. And then Ocean Spray saw it, picked it up, and then, donated a truck to him and a tray full of Ocean Spray. So, he's set up. It's one of those things that you couldn't write about, and it's just beautiful.
I love that. I do have a question though. Why a truck?
Because you can't get a lot of boxes of Ocean Spray in the trunk of a car.
So they just gave him a truck to keep the truck with all of the Ocean Spray in the truck?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think that's cute.
Did you like how I used the word trunk there for you?
Yes, not boot.
Not boot. I mean, it's a strange
Wait,
thing.
You say boot in Australia, right?
Yeah, we do. I'm putting something in the boot. Can you put that in the boot for me?
Wait,
throw it in the trunk.
Do you actually use boots also for boots?
Yeah, I'm going to strap on my boots that I've got out of the boot to go and give someone the boot.
Okay. It's a lot of boots.
Yeah, it is. Boot scooting.
You guys need to find more words.
Yes, but then if we find more words, you'll just abbreviate them and misspell them.
Oh, burn.
You see what I did there?
Oh, God. Okay. There was something else that what were the other?
I was going to launch into one.
Oh, let's hear it. What do you got?
Yeah. So I was going to say, in the back of Ocean Spray guy singing, I read about this and I haven't had the benefit, or maybe I'm lucky that I haven't because it would get stuck in my head more often. But Rick Astley came out with a Frito-Lay campaign talking about resolutions recently, where he's basically singing, or his song "Never Gonna Give You Up" playing in the background.
You know that song, right?
Oh my God, yeah, that's why I'm glad I probably don't have it here.
Never gonna give you up, never gonna let you down, never gonna run around and hurt you.
That's it.
Yes, it's a great song, and I think this is a great campaign. I thought this was very clever. So it was around New Year's time, and everyone was making New Year's resolutions to give something up, right? It's like dry January and all of that. And basically Frito-Lay decided to turn it on its head and say, no, we're not giving anything up. And then they went straight for it with the Never Gonna Give You Up song. And then they not only did a cute ad around it that has Rick in it, who still looks great. Like, I don't know how he looks so great, but he looks great.
Plastic surgery.
Anyway, I mean, not that he's like hot, but he's like, I was like, damn, okay, Rick Astley,
It was in the 80s, to be fair. I mean, we're talking.
Wasn't that long ago.
It was.
It wasn't. Was it? We're not old.
Okay, it was 87. So what's that? 35 years ago.
Yeah, he looks good. Anyway,
Look, he's held on. He's held on quite well. I mean,
that is
aged.
not the point. But the point is that he did this cute ad, and then they had all all the Frito Lay brands that you're not going to give up, and then they also did a TikTok contest. So there's a tie-in on TikTok that gives consumers an opportunity to interact with the campaign's theme and music, and there's a nevergonnagiveitup.com campaign. I don't know how they got that URL. It must have cost them a fortune. And if you share what you're not giving up, you have a chance to win $1,000. So you could say, I'm never giving up chocolate. I'm never giving up wine.
Look, I think it's fantastic. And I think it's turned the New Year's resolution paradigm on its head, which I think is brilliant.
Very clever.
It's a strategic insight that you can see that people sitting around a table and go, what are we going to do? The news, okay, people are snacking, and then just this eureka moment where someone's going, I've got it. It was a Skookum campaign. And you can see that it would have just gelled instantly.
No, and for me, I feel like whenever I've seen a campaign that really works, there is a kind of a no duh feeling to it where it looks so obvious. Of course you did that. But it's not obvious. It's only obvious to you because it makes sense. And when it makes, I think that's what's funny. The really brilliant campaigns don't have this like really overcomplicated, super creative, we're going to do this and this and this and that and this and this and this. And you're like, but how does it map to the brand? And the really good campaigns feel like an organic extension of the brand essence in a way that it's like, oh yeah, that's obvious. Like, of course they came up with that. And so the people that do the really brilliant campaigns usually don't get a lot of glory because it's just like, of course they did that. Like, that's obvious.
I wrote an article recently on this about why great strategy should be led by insights, not by numbers. And you shouldn't always be looking at data sets and what the numbers say. Sometimes you just have to connect to the brand. You have to connect to the feeling and to the consumer. And I think that this is just a brilliant example where there's nothing to support. This is why they need to run a campaign like that. It's not that they know that there's 75% of people who are doing New Year's resolutions and 35% of them will give them up by the first week and so on and so forth. They've just gone, we need to change the way people think about snack foods during this time. And we don't want them to give them up. And bang, we've got this moment. And I think that that's
Never
really...
going to give you up. What do you think about, did you hear about this O'Doul's and the dating website Match?
I did.
Teaming up for sober, curious virtual dates.
It's an interesting turn of phrase, isn't it?
You know what it's a play on? It's a play on bi curious. So they're doing
that up.
Yeah, so they're doing, it was like a big phrase for a long time, like bi curious. So I think they're doing it to be a little bit sensational because of the dating aspect. Pretty sure that's what they're doing. Yeah, so that was a clever play on words on their part. And then they teamed up to do virtual date kits. What does that mean exactly? They have, it says, includes limited edition O'Doul's cans. You know what O'Doul's is, right? You don't have it in Australia, though.
No, I don't have it, but I did some reading, and then we have equivalents here.
Got it. So yeah, a non-alcoholic beer. So you get the O'Doul's cans in the match blue signature color, custom socks, a candle, dating conversation cards, a smartphone stand, and a selfie light.
Yeah, the selfie light was a strange inclusion, I thought, but I mean, it's interesting. It's putting people in their best light. I get that.
I think that's probably what it is. Yeah, because you don't want to have a virtual date where you're like walking around on your phone and they're seeing up your nostril or something, I guess.
You're saying that that's not a good look?
No, don't do that. If you've been doing that, stop doing that.
I haven't been in the dating scene, so no. Just in my professional Zooms.
Do you have a vanity light? Do you have like a?
No, I don't. Are you telling me I need one?
No, you're perfect without it.
No. That's why I keep coming back. Maybe I'll try it next week and we'll see if we're right or wrong.
Okay, we'll do an A/B test.
Yeah, I won't tell you if it's on or off. You'll have to guess.
So anyway, yeah, and then they were doing, I'm sure they're doing it in January because so many people decide not to drink in January. They have like post New Year's resolution to not drink so much alcohol. So I'm guessing it was timed perfectly too. So I actually think this is pretty smart as well. And then it also played on some pandemic spurred surge in virtual first dates, so they were playing on that.
Yeah.
Plus then Match did a survey, so they have their own proprietary data that shows that 32% of people feel social pressure to drink on a first date. 43% are interested in trying a no or low alcohol drink on a first date, so that I assume that their experience is, untainted by libations.
Libation. Great word. Is that your word of the day?
No, I wish it were.
But I can tell you, you missed the boat anyway.
I know.
I've
So
got my word in.
No.
I did.
No.
Oh, I did earlier. It's so good. I
no.
snuck it in there.
Well, I missed it, so I guess you win. Well, unless you don't catch mine either.
That's right. There's still time to go. But if I get back to the serious for a bit, this campaign works well because they've thought of a lot of different aspects to it, like everything from the selfie light to the sober, the no alcohol beverage, to the fact that people are virtually dating, and so they've tied many different aspects in, and made it an experience that transcends just the moment in time where they're dating in that, and so it's got longevity. They're going to talk about it. Where'd you get a selfie lamp? Chances are that it's probably branded and everything, so people come over. Oh, you're on that dating app. So it really works nicely, and I think that it's not in your face. It's soft. It adds value to a user, and I think it's pretty clever.
I think it's clever too. Yeah, and
Oh, go on. Sorry, please.
No, I was just gonna say I like that it taps into these like cultural trends and these social trends that it feels timely. There's something about it that doesn't feel forced. It feels once again it feels organic and it feels less organic in a little bit to me than the other one, but not in a way that I don't find completely compelling.
Oh, again, that organic. I think the natural is better because you don't feel like it's being rubbed in your face or that you're having to digest it. It's coming across very natively.
Yep. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yep. So Hamish, I'm going to take this opportunity to interview you. How do you feel about that?
Ooh, okay. All right. Let's do it.
Have you been interviewed lately?
Not recently, no. It's been a while. I mean, it's only by the media, I'm hot in the press at the moment. As always.
So one thing I wanted to chat with you about is you have an awesome talk that you've done on the power of perspective, and you call it, what is it? The art of tipping over the pink elephant fact?
Yes, I do.
So explain to me what the importance of perspective is and how it relates to marketing.
I think in life and therefore in marketing, which I think needs to draw from life, we too often get caught up in seeing a problem from one angle. It could be the fact that we don't know how to generate more sales, or it could be that we don't know how to get from A to B on time, or whatever it might be, whatever those problems are. My philosophy is that it's about shifting your perspective and looking at the problem from a different side. Specifically when it comes to marketing, not looking at necessarily what the problem is that we have for our clients or what our clients' problems are, but looking at it from the angle of, okay, what are our clients' problems? What are they trying to achieve? And then reversing and saying, well, what are our customers' problems? What do we need to know about them that will help us shape our communication? And you get two angles at that point in time. But where it gets more interesting, I think, is when you shift it again and you look at, well, what do our customers know about us? Or what do our clients' customers know about us and about the products or the services that we're helping them promote? And then you tap into as well from a fourth dimension, well, what do they not know about us? And once you start pulling all these different pieces of the puzzle together about what you want to say, what their problem is, what they know and what they don't know, you start to get these areas of overlap, which you go, okay, well, we don't need to talk about those because our clients know about these. But they don't know about this, and we really need them to know about this. So how do we splice that into actually figuring out what to say in a way that resonates and adds value back to them? And I think if you can take that approach to your strategic initiatives, it shifts it from being a one-dimensional problem into one that you can come at from many angles, because it gives you more depth for your social media, it gives you depth for your PR, it gives you depth for your site content and your blogs and your thought leadership pieces and so on and so forth, because you're not thinking about it from one angle and then trying to recreate the wheel. You're actually looking at the wheel from a different angle and going, well, this should be a hovercraft. We don't need wheels. It just makes it a lot easier to build out a campaign when you've looked at the problem from multiple angles.
That's really interesting. How did you come up with that?
It's been something that I have for most of my life just adapted. My grandfather said to me when I was young that there's always more than one solution to any one problem. It doesn't matter what you think, even if it's easy or it's hard, look at it again so you actually understand things a little bit deeper. Don't rush the decision. Make sure that what you are doing is right, not easy, or is best, not cheapest, or whatever.
I think that's really interesting because, I mean, people do in general as a human behavior tend to take the path of least resistance. It's interesting that both in marketing as a brand and in life, digging into, well, what do we really want? What do we want our core to be? How do we want to express it outward, right? Rather than letting the outward tell you where to go and who you are,
That's what it's about, I think. Just shifting the way you think, and recognizing that life doesn't have to be what's presented. It's how you interpret it, and you can shift that lens. And once you do that, honestly, the opportunities that present themselves in a more organic way are a lot more exciting.
Right, because there's always going to be roadblocks and problems and challenges to overcome, obstacles. But I think what you're saying is you turn them on their head and you decide where the opportunities are to change the reality, then you can
exactly.
do that.
A lot of people say, oh, you've got to go for the low-hanging fruit, for example, because when you go for the low-hanging fruit, you're getting ahead, you're making hay while the sun shines. But another way to look at that is to look at it and go, well, if I concentrate on the low-hanging fruit, well, what happens to my systems? Do I overload my systems? Have I got the scale to keep up with demand? Or am I not challenging my staff enough and therefore they get bored and therefore I have high attrition? Simple is not always best. It's got to be fit for purpose. And I think that's the key to the model. Look at it and make sure that you're looking at all angles, considering how they will play out.
I love that. I think that's great.
Thank you.
So, and I know one of your other kind of, buzz topics, I should say, is at the power of why, asking why and asking why and then why and then why and then asking why to the why to the why, right? So talk a little bit about what that means and how marketers can use that to get to that core essence that we're talking about.
It's a good question. I think it comes back to what we're just talking about. Sometimes people take the path of least resistance, and I've been in a number of marketing meetings with clients, or been on client side and probably done it myself, where clients will say, we need more sales, more subscriptions, more members, more whatever. And you're like, oh, okay, well, that's fine. All right, we'll go out, we'll run a campaign, we'll drop the price, we'll do this, whatever we need to do. And you make recommendations based on that. But when you do that, you're skimming the surface more often than not. You're actually potentially doing yourself a disservice because you're not looking at that bigger picture. If you don't stop and ask why you're doing something, then you're potentially leaving something on the table. But if a client says we need more sales, and you just say, sure, we'll do this. Can you drop the price? Or do you have a new product feature coming out we can promote, or whatever it might be? If there's a product release, that's great, and you can promote that, and that justifies the sales, and that helps them justify their R&D budget. But if you look at it and say, well, why do you need more sales? And you start to ask why, and they say, well, we need more revenue. So, well, why? And you get down. It might turn out that they don't actually need more sales. What they need is to increase customer value and retain the existing customers they've got. And if they did that, they could spend less on marketing because they would be using their existing database and the existing client to upsell, on-sell, refer sell, etc. And they're asking those simple questions. Why? Makes people stop. If you said to me, oh, I'm hungry, and okay, I can fix you something to eat. If I ask you why, and you go, oh, well, I haven't eaten since breakfast. Well, why? Oh, well, I've been back-to-back meetings. Well, why? And you get down to it, you might be like, well, let's stop and not have this meeting for 15 minutes. Just go and have a break and you'll come back fresher. Those things can have lasting benefit beyond the immediate fix of the problem because they're actually solving the root of the problem.
I like that. So do you have a method to your madness for how many times you ask why, or you just ask why until you feel satisfied that you've gotten to scratch the very bottom of the barrel?
I think as often as not, yeah.
How do you know you're at the bottom of the barrel? How do you know when to stop?
When people stop talking or they yell at you. No. Yeah, you get to the bottom. I think people have epiphanies, or it leads the conversation in a new direction, which actually is enlightening unto itself. As people answer questions, they're like, oh, actually, oh, and you see them have these tangential thoughts. As they scoot off down that track, you then like, oh, okay, well, let's dig that thread out and see what unravels, and then you go down. So you sometimes end up with this massively rich feedback loop or repository. And out of that, you can dig. And I like to call these light bulb moments. They're the things that once you've realized, you can never turn the lights off, and you're like, oh, and you don't forget. And those moments, I think, are pivotal. People talk about what's the brand DNA or what's the brand essence. If you don't dig deep enough, how are you ever going to get to the DNA? The DNA is such a small component, but it's so pivotal in defining everything else beyond that.
Right. It's interesting.
So I think if you don't take that time to dig and scratch below the surface.
Right. And people emotionally connect to the authenticity. So if you don't find what's authentically the DNA of the brand, then there's not going to be anything that they can relate to on a deeper level in a meaningful way, right? Because there's not going to be that feeling that they're part of something. So you can't even do that until you find the brand essence that's authentically something that's relatable and the genesis of that brand. That's cool.
Authenticity is key.
It is.
People can sniff it out. And I mean, I know I'm preaching to the choir here. I mean, you've come up with the name Trust Relations for a reason. But I think authenticity, if you lack that, people sniff it out and they walk away in droves. And it's hard to earn that back. Even if you are authentic, the trust that's gone from it as a result is difficult to recoup. So, no, I think it's important to ask why enough times that you get to that intuitive moment of understanding the impetus behind things.
Yeah, I like that. And did you make that up, or did that come to you from somewhere else? I want to attribute it to you. I feel like it's you.
The why is me. I've always been keen to understand things, pull things apart, physically, metaphysically, to see how they can go back together. And when it came to marketing, I realized, I said to people, if I can't understand your brand and I can't pull it apart and criticize it with you to a point where we can defend everything, how do you expect you can ever go to market where you're going to be ripped apart by a lot more people than one? And so that's where the genesis of it really came from.
I love that. So were you a little boy that went around asking why to the point where your parents... I bet. I can totally picture it. Why? Why is the sky blue? Why is that happen? Yeah. Why are there clouds? Well, why are they white? Well, why are they puffy?
It's interesting. Digging deep into my nerd vault, I at school won a school poetry competition for a poem called
Why?
Why?
Wait, I want to hear this poem. Do you have it?
No, not anywhere easy to access, unfortunately.
Oh, okay. You got to find it for another time. I got to hear this. Okay, I wanted to ask you one more thing if I haven't worn you out with my questions, with my whys. Okay. So I know the other thing that we've talked about recently that you wrote an article in Forbes about was the proper role of data in modern marketing, because one of the things that you hit on in the article is that we're so data driven now as a marketing society and industry that we've sort of forgotten some of the artistic, emotional impact of marketing. So talk about why you think that happened and what marketers can do to correct it.
That's a really nice spin. Why did it happen? The genesis of it probably came about because people realized they could track the data. There's always been Nielsen and everything for TV going back years, but it wasn't an exact science. It was what people probably filled in as a rush to get the survey back to Nielsen. So it was rough science. And then as they realized they could get down to the nitty gritty and they could understand how many eyeballs for how long, on what day, at what time, and what therefore the cost for that person coming in. And then as we got omni-channel and you could see across devices, it got even more condensed and we could build profiles out. I think as the tools have become available to survey an audience, become cheaper and more accessible, I don't want to lay it at the feet of the financial teams and bean counters, etc. But I think that there's a little bit of ownership that needs to be taken from the fact that people started to calculate what is the cost of this campaign? How much is it going to return for me? How can you justify an increase in your budget this year when you can't justify it? And so the number crunching took over. And so people were more worried about how do I turn what I've got from this data set into a meaningful campaign, which will convert at X level. And I think people went into themselves and started to use the science to create something rather than letting the creative be backed up by the science. And people are intuitive and they have feelings and they can't always describe what those feelings are. And they make decisions that are sometimes based on habit, and the numbers can predict that. But sometimes they make it on impulse. Sometimes people will act a certain way because they want to be showy, or they want to show off to their friends, or they want to conserve dollars because they're about to buy something else. And those numbers can't necessarily be predicted. And it's where you need to rely on dragging people's emotions back into the mix. And I think that insight, as we've discussed previously with things like the I-95 traffic jam, where you tap into something in the moment, really resonates with people because it hits all the right things. I hate being stuck in traffic. I can imagine what that's like. I hate being hungry. I can imagine what that's like. I can imagine seeing someone walk down the street and handing things out Santa Claus like in the middle of the snow. And you get this moment where this one's not a campaign that just it delivered itself. But when you have those moments and then you let them play out into a bigger field, that moment resonates with people. Data can't predict that resonance, but what it can do is reinforce it and say, okay, well, you've got this insight. This insight is about this. And the area that the people are going to most positively react to that are going to be across these mediums or at this time of day or on this press outlet or whatever it might be. But you use it to deliver it rather than to drive it. And I think that that's where we've let marketing go off the rails a little bit. We've got to bring back some of the passion and some of the creativity. That's what we need to do more of in modern marketing.
I love that.
So I've had enough of the interviewing.
That's
I'm going to turn the spotlight on you.
All right, okay, let's do it.
Are you ready?
A little bit scared.
Comfortable?
I mean, I'm trying to be. I'm a little nervous.
Excellent. This is going to be fun. I'd like to understand a little bit more, given that you founded Trust on the premise that public relations was becoming a dirty word, and that the whole idea of going out there and touting what you were told to was probably the wrong thing to be doing. Can you tell me a little bit more about where you've been, where you're evolving to, and so what you see as the future of media / issues with credibility in the media?
That's a very, very big topic. So I will dive in and you can ask questions as we go because it's got to start somewhere. So yes, I think public relations, it's become a bit of a dirty word. I think it's become synonymous with spinning something and hiding something and pretending something. And there's this vibe to it that it feels inauthentic. And in today's day and world where everyone's connected on social media and can find out things and is less convinced by advertising if it isn't backed up by examples and it doesn't feel like it's coming from an authentic place and it's not substantiated by data and it's, you're saying you're sustainable, but all you're doing is putting in LED light bulbs in your warehouse or something, right? I mean, if you can't actually show what you're doing that is embodying the thing you're saying about yourself, then there's a huge disconnect and people no longer go along with it. I think there was a day and age where we weren't as savvy as consumers. We didn't know as much as we know now, and you could get by with some of that. But I think in general, where we're going is to a place where you have to be the thing you want people to believe, and then you have to communicate the thing that you are through actions, and you can do it through words as well, but you can't just spin something into existence and manufacture a reality that isn't so. Part of the reason I picked trust relations is that there is a term in IT where two servers will trust each other and then they will share data, right? That's a trust relation. And so I thought, oh, that's really interesting because you're kind of doing the same here. You're taking an audience and you're taking a brand and they're forming a mutual trust bond, like two servers that are deciding, yes, we're going to share information and connect. And so you have to have that trust there. You have to have the audience believe that what you're doing is valuable and that you are what you say you are. And through that, then there becomes a dialogue that can be organic and open and fruitful for everyone. The other piece of it is that I think businesses need to be doing something of value. So if a business isn't inherently bringing value to their target audience, whether that's consumers or clients, if you aren't actually doing something to make their lives better, then you really shouldn't exist, right? So if I don't think there are a lot of companies that aren't doing that, but to your point, then you have to go dig deeper. Why? And the why can't be to make money. Like, right? And I think that's been okay for a long time, but I think consumers don't respond to that anymore. And so we're at a place where I think both in branding and even just in business operations, people need to be thinking about, okay, am I actually coherent in myself? And this is true of people too, right? You know, if you're a person and you want somebody to think that you're trustworthy, you have to be trustworthy and you have to be it consistently. And if there's a gap between what you're putting out there, I'm friendly. I care about people. And if you want people to think that, then you have to care about them. So that means you have to remember details about their life. And then when you do that, then people think you're caring. So it's the same for a brand, right? You can't say we're innovative or we're cutting edge or we're disruptive unless you're doing that. You have to be that thing. And so in general, I mean, not to get too deep on it, but I think our whole life journey is about becoming more and more coherent with self, right? So it's like you're trying to find where there are the inconsistencies between what you want for yourself, what you want to be, and then where you're maybe not doing that thing and then correcting it. I think all of our journeys are about finding, you know, that sense of reality that we then choose to embody over time, but it can take a while. So it's the same for brands, right? So I think it's very, very important that they take that to heart and that moving forward, that's where, you know, brands that do that are going to succeed. Eventually, the brands that don't are going to become dinosaurs and they're going to become some hilarious, you know, relic of the past, basically. Like, hey, remember that company Exxon? You know, I mean, I'm not saying Exxon is, and I don't mean maybe they are doing something great for the world, but, you know, there will be a moment in time where I think those kinds of companies won't work anymore.
You're right. I think that whole dilemma of cognitive dissonance, when you say one thing and do another, is just too easy to see through these days. Being sprung has massive ramifications because the amplification that people have these days is far beyond what used to be there.
And it can really backfire. Like it's worse to put something else that's false than to say nothing, right? I mean,
you know, I've got two questions based on what you've said. Do you think that social media / review sites have played a part in the increase in cynicism towards media?
I think social media has contributed to people connecting outside of what they're told from on high. So it's the same with advertising, right? You know, you have a brand that's in the past could put out an advertisement that on the 4 networks that every single American watched on the TV that they had, that would be piped through to them and they would probably believe it because they didn't have any other way of getting information. And I think opening up the information channels where you can get information from multiple media outlets, multiple people on social media, you see that all of the people on your social networks are having a different experience than what the brand is saying or than what the government is saying. There can be a real disconnect. And I think that that's partly to blame. I also think that the other piece of it is a money grab. I think that as advertising has been less successful, more and more advertisers have pulled from advertising and news outlets, which means they're struggling financially. And that desperation, I think, has led to bad practices and poor ethics. So I think that clickbait, exactly. So it's kind of both. It's the owners wanting whoever owns the media that's behind the owner, right? There's got to be some layers there. They are trying to control narratives. And so part of that is now coming through and people are seeing through that and they're like, I don't trust the media because if they're owned by so-and-so who owns this pharmaceutical company, and they're saying this about this drug, then why would I believe it? I think people are just more quick to be skeptical and make connections. I mean, I studied journalism and I set out to be a reporter. I wanted to be a reporter because I wanted to be the watchdog of society, and I wanted to report on, the truth and let everybody know and get it out there for the public. And then I quickly realized that that wasn't really where the media was blowing. So I would rather do PR because I don't feel like I'm doing a service right now to humanity.
Yeah.
And that was really where my heart was coming from. And
No,
so
that's sad.
yeah, so it was really disheartening. I had a pretty rough few years, not gonna lie, around that time. And I think for me it's been even more disheartening to watch what used to be objectivity and sort of a standard of objectivity in news reporting. So part of the reason I also didn't love reporting was that I had to tell both sides of the story. And if I did it well, then neither story was super happy because they only wanted their story told, or they were the only one that was right.
Yeah.
And as a people pleaser who wants everyone to be happy, that was a really difficult position for me to put myself in. And so the other thing that I started to see was that this commitment to telling both sides of the story without your own personal opinion, without color, without perspective, without, yes, you can give context to what's going on in society, but I barely ever see a news story now that doesn't have a slant that's so obvious that I don't know the difference between that news story and an op-ed. And I find it very upsetting because it's like you can't read anything about anything without it telling you what to think about the thing you're reading about. And the news was supposed to be there to give you information so you could make your own decision. And I feel like it's disrespectful to readers and listeners and viewers, you know, to tell them what to think as though they're not capable of making their own critical thinking and, assessments about a situation and deciding for themselves. So I think that's also leading to, this downfall of credibility in the media, which is very problematic for not just for publicists, which is the obvious thing, because publicists are using the credibility of media as their value that they're bringing to clients, right? We get you in the press, it elevates awareness of your brand, it builds your credibility. Eureka. Well, if the media is no longer credible, at some point there will be a tipping point where media relations no longer has the impact it used to. And that's not only concerning for the PR industry, but it's concerning for brands who have society. So how do you then get information out or from anyone about whatever is credible? How do you know whether a brand is credible? Or if you're a brand, how do you build credibility and let people know the great things you're doing if everything just devolves into a media landscape where it feels completely run by the government, the CIA? I don't know, the rich people, there's a certain point where it's bad for everyone. It also really concerns me when I see people that are writing these opinionated news stories, because what does that mean for freedom of speech, freedom of the press? And then you see all the censorship things happening in social media and that whole thing. If we don't have freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of the press, we aren't America anymore.
It's the dissolution of the fourth estate, really, is what you're saying. You're merging maybe it depends on who those powers that be are, whether they're the religious factions, whether or not it's the political factions or whatever it might be. But everything you're describing is the dissolution of that fourth estate as a pillar of society.
Yeah.
And if that's gone, you're right. Where do we stand? And then trust is gone. I wanted to finish on this question, and I don't know. Maybe I'll ask if this is the way it's moving forward. How do brands build trust in an environment where there is this cynicism about advertising and marketing, and cynicism now about the press establishment? How do we move forward?
It's a very good question. Some of it is that there will be new channels that pop up. There are always new channels that pop up, whether that's a new social media network where people are trying to be less skeptical and there's not a perceived censorship happening. And also somehow it becomes not politicized, because there are some social media platforms that are rising up to address issues that they see around censorship. But so far, in America, at least, they have been labeled as far right, very extreme.
Alt-left. Yep.
I think alt left is basically mainstream news right now in the minds of most people. But obviously there are a lot of people who disagree with me saying that, but for that reason, I think that you see most people leaning into a platform where they feel like they can express a conservative viewpoint on things.
My concern with that is that what you're describing is a splintering of ongoing platforms, because you say there's always new platforms coming up and things like that, and people will use them. But the concern is that they become flashes in the pan, don't they? And as soon as they sell out, they become commercialized, or otherwise, people
Right.
abandon ship and go somewhere else.
Or they get gobbled up. And so, yes, there is a concern that people have great intentions and that they will just get folded into an existing monstrosity and become part of the same soup. I mean, there are a lot of new news channels and podcasts and things like that that are rising up as well to address some of this. And they are very, very popular, but they are also very, very polarized. And so the bigger issue that I'm seeing is that if there isn't a collectively agreed upon source of objective news that's credible, then as a society, you end up with two Americas now. I mean, now
Hmm.
it could end up being 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or, I mean, but at the moment it's very, very divided, and people have completely different realities of how they're experiencing what's happening in the world because they're listening to news outlets that once again are kind of catering to a specific perspective. And so, if I magically won the lottery or could, build a company that was worth $1 billion, what I would do with that money, without a doubt, is try to create, whether I'm crazy or not, I would try to create a new news organization that was so strict about objectivity and reporting facts and finding facts and not taking in PR from the
You're
various
doing yourself out of a
sources.
job.
I know. I mean, I would be in a way, but not necessarily, because you, as a reporter, you're supposed to be getting information that's helpful from public relations people or trust relations people who are providing data and information and substantiated facts. And I mean, it shouldn't be spin. It should be that. So when I say that, it's not really me working myself out of a job as much just sort of saying goodnight to the old school PR way of doing things. We need to go to a place where we have a way of agreeing on some kind of a reality. And I don't quite know how to do that outside of having a news organization that everyone trusts.
Mm. And look, I think we talked about this last year, um, about the need for impartiality on boards and in the management of the existing establishments, and that a way they could potentially rescue is to get rid of the agendas as being, you know, seen as, whether it's alt right, whether it's centrist, whether move back towards actually being over, what's the word I'm looking for? An overwatch by a board and management that has equal representation from nominated people from both sides of the political spectrum,
Yes.
and from, you have people who come from different religious backgrounds and have more of a cross section of news coverage that expands beyond the pushing of an agenda, and allow pieces to be debated internally before they're debated externally, creating those rifts within the greater society.
Mm-hmm. And this is also why I get really concerned when I see brands that are leaning in too much to taking a political stance on something, because I feel like they're not doing themselves or society a service.
I
In
agree.
some cases, if that's their, if that is their brand tenet and that's really authentically who they are, and they are happy to take a hard line on something, I think it's okay. But I mean, they're not adding to a sense of unity. They're sort of doubling down on this disintegration of society that
Schism. Mm.
yeah. So it does concern me when I see that. Now we're throwing corporate weight into this ring that
Mhm.
should be sealed up and never used again, because we shouldn't be watching Spartans kill each other or whatever. Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
agreed.
Yeah.
All right, is that enough of the hot seat for you?
Yeah. Unless there's something else you're dying to ask me.
No, look, I was going to ask, do you think there is a place for siphoning out damage control and reputation management from the broader term of PR, and would that help?
Hmm.
Because I think what you were saying when I wrote this was that there's a lot of people who are going out there and touting half truths to turn around other half truths, and therefore it's become about spin. And therefore, some of the time they're trying to undo the messes that they've created. So, is there more of a place that, whilst I know functions of reputation management and damage control exist, is there broader spectrum application for decentralizing those from the broader term of PR and letting PR focus on growth tactics, whereas that is then focusing on reversing negativity?
I mean, in my mind, that will always be PR. So maybe damage control stays as PR, and then to your point, everything that is not either trying to cover up a scandal or create news where there is none by making celebrity couples date that aren't married that actually, or what, you know what I mean? I mean, maybe that stays as PR and we just have a new term for trust
Yeah.
relations, which is
Look
for
at you go.
for brand for brands.
Here she comes, the pioneer.
Oh boy. So before we close the show today, it's time for the buzzword reveal.
Oh
So
my, yes. She hasn't used it.
I was gonna be able to use it during the interview, but I got so like
Caught up?
passionate and caught up in the interview, and I was like, damn it.
I
So
did
hey,
well.
I already know I didn't catch you. So what was your
Mm.
secret buzzword?
My word of the day was skookum.
What?
Skookum. That's
When
right.
did
You
you
heard it.
use that? I didn't even hear you say that.
I said that it was a skookum campaign, talking about the Frito-Lay, I believe it was.
Wait, so what does that even mean?
Yeah, it means excellent, first rate. I mean, everyone knows
And I just lost it in your charming accent.
that. It's a skookum campaign. I just muffled myself. Although, no, I used it. I wasn't sure how to use it, but I got it in there. What was your word of the day?
My word of the day was obdurate. Obdurate.
Oh. You can't even say it.
I
No wonder you
can't
couldn't
even
get it in.
pronounce it right. I know. I mean, I was gonna go, at one point I got nervous. I was like, I have to go listen to this again. I don't remember how to pronounce it.
Obdurate. Oh, well, look,
Obdurate.
next time. One word to me. And what does obdurate mean, did you say?
It's an adjective, unmoved by persuasion, pity, or tender feelings, stubborn, unyielding, stubbornly resistant to moral influence, and persistently impenitent.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Impenitent. Impenitent. I said it wrong.
Well,
I can't even read the definition for the Oh my God.
My skookum is an adjective deriving from Northwest US and Canada. And the first definition being large, powerful, impressive. And the second one being excellent, first rate.
I'm so Americanized.
Well, I thought if it's deriving from up, in the Northwest, I've got to give it a bit of a twang.
That's
the
amazing.
best you get out of me.
I didn't even. Can you do an American accent?
I'm not going to do that. No, not when we're recording. I do not need this being used against me in a court of law.
I almost caught it.
Yes, good try. So that's a wrap. Thank you for tuning in and listening to our podcast today. We hope you've got something great out of it. We're going to be podcasting every 2 weeks, so remember to tune back in and stream us from wherever you like to get your favorite podcasts.
And if you like us, which we know you do, please remember to subscribe, rate, and share our show to keep the content coming your way and make sure that everyone knows about our wonderful podcast.